Welcome to the podcast of All Means All. In this episode, Brian Lynam, Yuko Uesugi, and Baran Yousefi will talk about inclusive education in diverse contexts.
We're here today, obviously, to talk about inclusive education in diverse contexts. As I think we all know, inclusive education is an approach to education that ensures that all students have the equal access to education, regardless of their diverse backgrounds and abilities. But of course, today we want to talk more about the different contexts that these students can be placed in. So I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion. Yeah, so do you have any examples maybe of some diverse contexts that could be important for what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so one of the contexts is in prisons. So in Iran, in women's prisons, sometimes women are pregnant and give birth while they're in prison. And they decide to keep the baby, maybe because they don't have anyone else to take care of the baby outside. So when the baby grows up, well, obviously they're going to need some education and daycare. So there are some government programs or NGO programs where they go inside the prison and they do some schooling for those children. It's not as good as we want it to be, but it's better than nothing, I guess. But obviously they are facing so many challenges like lack of resources due to security reasons or lack of social interaction because those children never get to see anyone else outside of the prison, so they never know how to communicate when they go out eventually. So yeah, that's one of the...
It's a very good example to start off with today, the conversation. We briefly discussed it before, so perhaps we could think of even more diverse contexts and also think about the individual challenges those students might have in those situations. And we think about how to also engage communities in inclusive education in that regard, and also maybe some best practices that we can find around the world, perhaps in our own context, about how to support these students. Just as you're talking about prisons there, it made me think of an example in Ireland. So there's in Maynooth University have an access program that really tries to support inmates in Mountjoy prison in Ireland, and it has education support for them where there's some training for them when they're on day release, and also when they leave prison that they're actually tried to encouraged to join university after, because a lot of the inmates maybe never had the opportunity before, or weren't supported, and perhaps didn't feel like they could do it themselves. So this type of initiative really is helpful towards them and giving them access to education after, and ultimately, empower their own lives and support their learning. So I think it's also very relevant to what you said. Are there any examples from Japan in this regard?
Yes, education for young people, especially young prisoners in Japan is a multidimensional approach aimed at rehabilitation and reintegration. These two words are key. And while there are challenges, the emphasis on the individualized education and vocational training plays a crucial role in helping young offenders build a better life.
Okay, it's interesting. Yeah.
And another example I'd like to show is like a need in Japanese society. Yeah, and as an inclusive, diverse context, NEET. Have you ever heard NEET?
No.
No. So NEET is an acronym for the term "not in education, employment, or training," and refers to the group of adolescents and young adults who are not in school, at work, or in vocational training. So the term NEET. In other words, like a social withdrawal, or hikikomori in Japanese, expand the group of young people, including the group of economically inactive young people. And there are 1.5 million people aged from 15 to 64, are so-called social withdrawal, hikikomori. And they stay home and rarely go out for a long time. And one of the main reasons is for becoming social withdrawal was the outbreak of the new coronavirus. And another reason for that, they said, because I don't think I can solve the problems, even if I consult social workers. So as possible solution, I'd like to suggest is that the Japanese government has some measurements to support the hikikomori people. And and they practice they have places to stay and daycare. They are provided by hospitals, a local government, and family association, and NGOs, and they consult. They consist of people who have gone through the same experiences. So that kind of a common place, we call that ibasho, and places to stay or a daycare. So in that place, they can share what they have experienced. That's like hardship. And then throughout the conversation, they gain confidence and move on to the next step. So confidence comes from the variety of sources, but the most basic solution is to receive approval from others.
Yeah, really important to break down those barriers for students in these diverse contexts.
That's right.
I was just wondering, is this a relatively recent phenomenon in Japan, the hikikomori, I think you said,
Yeah.
Or has it always been there? Because you mentioned there's students from 15 to 64,
Yeah,
so I'm just wondering.
Right. Yeah, there used to be like that, the people like that, but the number of hikikomori is increasing now. Yeah, so it kind of big social issue, and it is very hard to let them out of their houses because they don't trust people. They don't like to communicate with others, so the problem stays, and it's very hard. But government support and NGOs are doing their best to support people like that.
It reminds me, and it's quite similar. There's a context in Ireland that's relevant to this too, because there is an approach called iSchool, and it is basically an online remote learning facility for students who also drop out of mainstream education for a variety of reasons. Some are similar in terms of maybe receiving some discrimination or some physical issues or anxiety or bullying, but yeah, the net effect is they don't want to or not able to attend regular education. So iSchool was set up in 2009, and it is basically remote working for the students. There's a lot of tutors on hand to help them. First of all, the student has to be referred by the welfare officer, and then they get login details to join the website. They get a welcome pack, all information how to do it, and then once a tutor has been assigned, they also make sure that there's like an individual plan set up for that student to help them grow and develop their best potential after, and then eventually then try to reintegrate them back into society, into education or further employment. Many end up working in some professions such as hairdressing or various things, or continue on to further education or university. So it is working quite well in that regard, and very similar to what you said actually in Japan.
Yeah, and we have another example of after-school programs. In Japan, there are places like after-school program that provide a place for elementary school children to do homework after school, usually with volunteer instructors to watch over them. And working parents often take advantage of this program because it is safer than going home alone for children when both parents are at work. As a benefit, the parents pay low monthly fee, and the children can communicate with each other and learn social skills. And at Christmas time, they can build Christmas trees, decorate them, and also bake cake. So it's really nice communication they can make. So this system is not a part of school education, but it's based on the cooperation of local people, and there is support from government and NPOs such as After School Children's Club or classes in Japan.
Okay, interesting.
That's very interesting because it's kind of connecting them to life. Like, when you say that they're doing like Christmas trees Another context that I can think of is the hospital school programs. So it started in Italy first. It was set up to support children who are admitted to hospitals to help them transition back when they're going back to their mainstream school, because of course they fall behind, like they miss some opportunities while they're outside of school, and they need to keep up somehow. And the main goal was to have a student-tailored and student-specific education program. So it was a great opportunity for the student to learn whatever they wanted to learn on their own pace. But at the same time, it was a challenge for them because it was temporary and they eventually went back to the mainstream school. So they had to also do whatever the mainstream school used to do. So the temporary education was one of the challenges, and also the irregular actually, interruptions, because, well, obviously they need to get their treatments all the time and always conflicted with that.
Yeah, sounds, it draws parallels to also in Ireland, we have some school hospitals. Not that many, I think it's just 7 at the moment. And I know a few of those are based in Dublin. There's Crumlin and Tala, for example. But yeah, it's quite similar in that regard too. There's regular classes for the students who are in hospital who aren't able to go to school. I think primary is at 11 a.m. and then post-primary is at 1 p.m. There's also individual support. And I mean, the challenges will be the same for the students as to what they experience, the medical attention and what's needed during the schooling. But there's also some complexities involved in it, because in 2022 there was a report about the system for school hospitals in Ireland, and I think there are 21 teachers in total, which is not a lot, and almost half the teachers reported that they felt they lacked the adequate training to actually work in a school hospital, because the formal training that teachers go through is, the typical educational setting, but not necessarily in a hospital context, which has other demands such as understanding the students' individual needs, their medical needs, like some very complex things that maybe they're not prepared for. So there was a desire for specific training for certain teachers to work in school hospitals. As well, they also felt that the emotional demands of working in a school hospital are quite different from a traditional school too, and also that, in terms of empathy and an emotional part, it's quite challenging. So it is wonderful that these efforts are there, and there is these links, with schools and hospitals, but it's also quite challenging to make it work smoothly and for the process to go, as best it can. So it needs a bit more attention, I think.
But it's a government-supported program.
It's government-supported, yes.
Yeah. So in Iran, it's not government-supported. There's no official program provided by the government to go to the hospitals and support children's education, but it's just volunteers and NGOs who go in, and it could be good because they are more specialized in that, emotional care and emotional support. But at the same time, they're challenging so much because there's lack of resources like financial support or educational support. Yeah.
So we have government-supported inclusive education for young patients in hospital in Japan, and we have it is very important aspect in ensuring that children who are hospitalized for extended periods do not fall behind in their education. So this approach involves providing educational opportunities that cater to the diverse needs of these young patients. And we have a legal and policy framework, such as Education for Sick Children Law and Special Support Services in School Act. And we have hospital schools and homebound education services where the students can get education at home. And distance learning is also provided, so they can learn online and to get education even at home.
Yeah, that's really important. Like the make sure students don't fall behind in their education whilst in these diverse contexts, because I think these students they're often forgotten about, and we don't think about them as much, but they are very active. There's a lot of students in that situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they also need more needs, like emotional needs, like
that's right. Yeah. Counseling and
Another context that comes to my mind is refugee camps. So it's very different in different countries, but the shared challenges that they're having is language barrier, because they're refugees, they're speaking another language. Also, lack of interaction with the host country, because, in Iran, refugees are not allowed to leave the camp for 2 years almost, and they don't get to see outside, and when they leave the camp, it's still new for them. they don't know how to speak the language, they don't know how to communicate with Iranian people. And I think it's also the same case in Germany and some other countries.
Interesting that in Ireland, I'm quite sure that the refugee students, when they come, they have to attend a mainstream school within 3 months. It's by law they have to attend, and they have to travel to the school itself.
So they get to experience
real. They do. The teachers sometimes, it's been reported that they may not always follow up on cases when there's been absenteeism because maybe there's an opinion that or belief that maybe that they might be absent, so they might not get that same attention or treatment that the other students. So perhaps they're a bit excluded in that sense, but at least physically, the idea is that they go. Yeah, I'm Irish, but I work in the Netherlands in a teacher training provider there, and some of my students actually are involved with students in Afghanistan, and there's a camp set up there, and it's for girls in Afghanistan who can't receive education due to political situation. And it's a diverse context in the sense that the classes are conducted via Zoom. The teachers are, in this case, some training teachers in the Netherlands, and there's also a school in the US in San Diego. And it gives these students an opportunity to receive some form of education when it's pretty much banned or illegal in their home country. And if you're very careful, the context is so different because these students just to go to an online class have to go sometimes a quiet part of the day when it won't be seen because it's dangerous and there's other insecurities involved. So it just brings the point home of how some students are accessing education in such a different manner. But there are many great initiatives out there. Yeah, this is called Flowers for the Future, I think. Yeah.
Wow, so we found a lot in common, right? So to pursue, and we need to have some a solution, right? While we are discussing, I found a lot in common. Yeah. So I think as a strategies for promoting inclusive education, I think as you said, teachers for training is very important, and also collaborative teaching is included in that one, and also universal design for learning. UDL is also important. Of course, government support or NPO supports are really necessary. So policy and advocacy are important. So community engagement is another important thing to look at. So involving community is an important way and to promote inclusive education. So borderlessly and collaboratively, we can move forward to the future to make exclusive situation more inclusive situation.
Yeah, that's a very key point, isn't it? I think it requires a concerted effort of everyone, many different groups of stakeholders in society to make these links and these interactions possible. So the students who are receiving education in diverse contexts, are able to hopefully reintegrate or give them the best opportunities possible, because we have so many things in common. I think a lot of the strategies are quite similar in these diverse contexts, making sure the communities are involved in education, also holistic development, not just the academic part, but the social and emotional side of things.
Emotional support, So another solution that we can think of is to prepare some maybe programs or some initiatives to help these children or anyone in these diverse contexts to have a smooth transition when they go back to their mainstream programs, because, these contexts are very difficult and very challenging, so they're going to need very much of a support, I guess.
Yeah, and society benefits as a whole in the whole social integration and empowers the students, gives them the chance to achieve their potential, which is what everyone wants.
Yeah. Well, that was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thanks very much, both of you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the podcast of All Means All. In the show notes, there is a link to the chapter in the open textbook. There you can find the transcript of the video and more information on the topic.